What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back with another video. And of course you're going to see this title and think, oh my god, another Leaf video, another Leaf trade video. This is going to be my video talking about the most realistic options for the Toronto Maple Leafs when it comes to trades that they can make in the offseason. Now, I am a Leaf fan, don't worry, there isn't some crazy bias here. I'm not suggesting ridiculous deals. I'm going through stuff that actually would make sense for the team and probably for other teams as well. And yeah, I mean, you guys can comment down below whether or not you think some of this stuff can happen. And by the way, I am not saying all of this is going to happen. None of this stuff could happen in the offseason. I'm not a GM. The people who are watching this likely aren't a GM. And if you are, I mean, you probably shouldn't be on YouTube watching YouTube videos. But these are just some options that I came up with. And they're realistic. This isn't some crazy trades. These are things that I actually believe could happen. Now, some of these you may disagree with, but I'd like to have a counter discussion with you guys in the comments down below. And yeah, that's what it's for. Let's not get crazy and comment all this ridiculous stuff, because it's going to get deleted if you're cursing and swearing at people. It just doesn't make any sense. So the first trade option that could happen, and again, some of these will vary with what other cap moves are made. So other moves would have to be made, and I also have videos coming up that are going to be looking at cap friendly in the armchair GM section, basically where you can make your own team, do your own trades, and show how the Leafs can fit under the cap, and other teams of course. But I hate to break it to you people that think that they can't make it under the cap. They actually can with ease with a couple moves, and you know, they're not unrealistic. So like, guys, it's very possible without any crazy moves. So there is one crazy move on here that I'll get to, but the first one I want to talk about is pretty much the most obvious one, and that's Connor Brown being moved to clear space. The problem with Connor Brown is he's being paid, I believe, just over $2 million, and I think he only has 1 or 2 years left on his deal. But he can't be getting paid that much to be a guy on their fourth line. He's probably not going to get any third line ice time with the Leafs, but on another team, and depending on where he goes, he could fit in on the second and third line. Hell, the reason why I have a board with me here, and I'll show you guys at the end how I was writing it all down. But the reason why Brown's name has been out there is because of the money, first of all, in the cap space. But second, the Edmonton Oilers were interested in bringing him in at the deadline this year to see if something could, you know, happen with McDavid. Maybe him and McDavid could start playing together again, like the OHL, the Erie Otters, whatever. Maybe Connor Brown could have been an option for them. Benning would have been coming the other way. But I feel like at this point, the Leafs, if they do trade him, Edmonton or not, they're going to be looking to ship him off for a draft pick or maybe a prospect that they can send to the Marlies, because I don't think that they want to take back any salary in a deal like this. This is just to give themselves a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to making another signing, like a guy like Johnsson or Kapanen, who are both restricted free agents. Alright, the next move here is Nikita Zaitsev to clear cap space. Now, if you take a look at Cap Friendly, which is the tabs I have open in front of me, there are actually a handful of teams that have a ton of cap space that actually makes sense. So the three that I wrote down is the Ottawa Senators, the Devils, and the Flyers. Now the Flyers to me don't make a ton of sense, but they do have a lot of cap space. The Devils are a team that definitely could take a flyer on that, because it's just free assets plus a decent defenseman in Nikita Zaitsev. And a lot of people actually liked his play in the playoffs when he was playing with Jake Muzzin. And, you know, he kills penalties. He's a decent defenseman who can put up points. And again, Zaitsev might be better on a team where he doesn't have to play that crazy defensive role that the Leafs almost, I don't want to say forced him to play, but they kind of switched his game a little bit. In his rookie season, he was getting power play time. He was acting more of an offensive style of defenseman, and he looked much better. So that could happen on another team. I also wrote down the Ottawa Senators, like I mentioned, because they need to reach the cap floor, and if they get a chance to pick up a defenseman while attached assets to it as well, like Zaitsev wouldn't just go by himself. It would be Zaitsev plus a pick and a prospect, or maybe one of them, just depending on what it is. Like if it's a higher pick and a lower end prospect, or if it's a decent pick and a pretty decent prospect, or it could be a mix up of anything. Again, not a guarantee that it'll happen, but those are three teams that definitely I could see. Possibly the Flyers, to me, I don't know about that one, but The Sens and Devils are interesting because they're both kind of retooling. The Sens are definitely rebuilding, but the Devils are kind of retooling. So we'll have to see. But Zaitsev is the second option I have on here, and he would definitely help when it comes to clearing space. But I've also created a team on Cap Friendly that Zaitsev stays, and it still works out fine. So he's an option. The next one is them bringing in a player, and that's Colin Miller from the Vegas Golden Knights. So I figure that Vegas definitely needs this trade to happen because, first of all, I know that he's been pretty good. Now I'm gonna look at the cap space here, and currently Vegas is over the salary cap, and they need to make moves to remove that. They can't really afford to be taking back big salaries at all, to be honest with you, and that's the same thing with the Leafs. But if they make other moves, and the Leafs would have to move out some money here, and maybe a Zaitsev trade then allows them to bring in a guy like Miller, or maybe Brown plus somebody else going allows them to bring in Miller. There's a lot of possibilities, but the Vegas Golden Knights can't afford to be over the cap. Like, you're literally not allowed to do that. So we'll have to see what happens in Vegas, but I think that he might be a little expendable at this point. They weren't really happy with this play, I guess, at the end of this year. He was a healthy scratch in the playoffs, so again, it's kind of tough to see what they're going to do, but he played in 65 games this year. He had 29 points, 3 goals, 26 assists. Last year, he had 41 points in 82 games, 10 goals, 31 assists. He's not some defensive juggernaut, but at the same time, he does his job. He can get points. We'll have to see what happens there, but I think that he's a pretty decent option. I can't see him being overly expensive. He is a right-handed shot defenseman, so yeah, that does bump up the price to trade for him. It definitely wouldn't be an easy trade to make, but it could be something that the Leafs are interested in. His cap hit is $3.8 million, under $4 million, which, of course, if you clear out salary, especially Zaitsev, I mean, it's a no-brainer to go after a guy like this. It just depends on what they would have to give up. I wrote down picks and prospects because that's literally what you're going to have to do with Vegas at this point. They can't afford to take on a big salary. So Colin Miller's the next guy that I have on here. So next I had Gudas, or Radko Gudas, that is, from the Flyers, or other low-budget, second-tier type of defenseman. So the reason why I like Radko Gudas is, if a lot of people aren't familiar with him, first of all, he was available at the trade deadline this year, and I'm sure the Leafs took a flyer on him. No pun intended, but his cap hit is $3.3 million, and there's only 1 year remaining on there. The Flyers are a team that could definitely have the door open for trades. Now, this is not me just saying this. Bob McKenzie has been very vocal about it. I believe Chris Johnson and Elliot Friedman have also both touched on it. But Bob McKenzie had a question from a viewer saying, asking if maybe it's a possibility that the Leafs go after him. And he thinks that there's a possibility that it could happen, because Gudas is a solid guy that the Leafs could be interested in. He's a bit of a rough, tough guy. Like, he can hit, but he also plays a really well-rounded defensive style of game. Like, he actually can put up points, but also be physical and be a very good defensive style defenseman. I think in a perfect world, Gudas becomes a Maple Leaf. I think that he is almost a perfect fit. You make the people who want grit all over the team very happy because he brings that. He brings points and a defensive style, so analytics people love Gudas. He performs well on a lot of advanced statistics, so that's pretty cool. And, I mean, that's a pretty cheap salary for bringing in a right-handed shot defenseman. Again, tough. He's got a bit of grit. He can put up some points, very sound in his own end. And you pair him with Morgan Riley, the rest is history. And you'd probably do the same thing with Colin Miller. And then it bumps down your D-core, so then you have guys like Dermott and Muzzin on the second pairing, and then Rosen, who will probably make the step, and maybe Timothy Liljegren. So you've got a little bit of youth on the third pairing, but you have to see what those young guys have got. And of course, you've got Kivi Holme, who they brought in. There's a bunch of options, don't worry. I'm going to be doing all those sorts of cap-friendly roster stuff, so you guys will see it. Now, this is where a lot of people might get angry in the comments. This last option is not a guarantee. I'm not saying it could happen. It might not ever happen, and it might be a fairy tale land trade. But to me, this kind of makes sense. But at the same time, there's a reason why I left it last, because I don't believe it's going to happen. I would love for it to happen. I think that it's fair, but the NHL would definitely investigate. So I have Patrick Marleau being traded, much like the Zaitsev deal, to a team that has a lot of, cap. They have a lot of room. They need to reach the cap floor. But to me, this trade would work the best with the Ottawa Senators. So what I figured was, is Marleau gets traded to the Senators, they buy him out, and then they bring him back on a cheaper deal. Now, I'm pretty sure somebody left this as a comment, so I'm not taking full credit of, oh, I just thought of this. But, I mean, I was already thinking of something like this before because of the deal that I'm going to mention next, is the Brooks Orpik deal. But when that comment was brought up, I was against it. I was like, no, this won't work. I don't think they'll do this. And the NHL would be against it. But then I did research for a little bit, and I sat on it, and I thought, okay, this probably won't happen, but at least I'm going to bring it up in this video. So if you trade him, and then that team buys him out, remember, he's over 35, so that cap hit would still stay at $6.25 million. But the Leafs would be paying, most of his bonus. And by the way, Marleau's bonus is split up into two sections. It's not all paid out on July 1st. It gets paid out a little bit on July 1st, and then the rest is paid out in December. So they would be paying a good chunk, so Ottawa wouldn't really be paying too much in real dollars. And again, I'm just saying Ottawa, it could be somebody else, but they wouldn't be paying too much, and they have to reach the cap floor anyway. So they buy him out, and that 6.25 stays there, but they still have tons of room to work with. They don't really have any big name guys they have to keep around, and I'm not sure how many teams are willing to go there in free agency at this point. So for them, for Ottawa, it makes sense because, one, the cap floor, two, you get free assets, and it's only for 1 year. It's not like they're buying out 4 years of his contract. It's literally 1 season, and you get free assets for it. And you probably are getting a decent pick and probably a decent prospect, or a mix of 3 or 4 things. You never know, but I don't think it would take that much. And then the Leafs could bring back Marleau on like a 1 year $1 million deal, just so that way they save themselves like $5 million in cap space. This happened before, and it was Philip Grubauer and Brooks Orpik going to the Colorado Avalanche for a second-round pick. Now, the Leafs wouldn't get back that. I don't even think Dubas would ask for something like that. He would probably look to say, okay, listen, we'll take back a low pick because, we're not looking for picks and stuff here. We're looking for salary. We're looking for money. So we're going to give you a pretty good prospect and a pick, maybe one or the other or both, or maybe a mix, like I said, and we're not going to look for anything back. That's a solid move. I think that it would make sense. It clears the Leafs out of having to, do anything crazy, and then Marleau gets, playing time for way less money. Now, people are going to say, oh, well, Marleau might not want to do this. You're guaranteeing Marleau that he's going to come back, and if he doesn't want to, then he can go somewhere else. But you can tell him, listen, like, we want to bring you back. I'm sure Ottawa would be game if they were getting back, free assets for just taking on 1 year and then buying him out. To me, it makes sense. And again, this seems like a fairy tale trade or whatever. I'm just saying it would be cool if that was the possibility. So I think that I said them in order of what I think they would happen. Oh, and by the way, with the Zaitsev deal that I mentioned second, the Leafs have to make this trade pretty soon because he has a no trade clause that kicks in, I believe, on July 1st. So they got to make something happen if Zaitsev's the guy that's going to move. So let me know what you guys think about this video. Again, I'm not saying that these things are going to happen. It's just a general discussion of moves that the Leafs could possibly make. This was the board I had. I was just writing like crazy. I do this for a lot of things because I'm sick of just typing everything. I like writing stuff down. I like having the whiteboard. Helps me with my thoughts to remember stuff, and I've got to do this more often, to be honest with you guys. But if you're new, make sure to subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Join the squad. Let's get to 6,000 subscribers. The support's been great lately, and hopefully this video will have some great comments down below with people having conversations. Have civil conversations in the comments, everybody. I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Make sure to click that notification bell. Peace.